right, Aftershocks Tremors, we're back. It's been a little bit, Chris. Been about 4 or 5 weeks or so since we've done one of these, maybe even more than that. I'm not really sure. Hard to keep up these days with all this shit going on with our shows, man. What's going on? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Doing good, doing good. Just yeah, just we've been busy, obviously, with all the shows on the network and everything. Aftershocks, we're pounding away still at that, doing what we do in there, and trying to get more of these tremors done. Do some, just trying to, I guess, improve our quality of videos or interviews, whatever you want to, call them, but our
Mhm.
episodes, I should say.
Sure.
So yeah, just other than that, obviously the same old shit, in daily life, man. But what's going on, Chris Aiken Presents? Anything new going on with you and Chris Aiken Presents?
Just lots and lots of interviews, man. Lots of name stuff, lots of different, maybe less known stuff. Just all over the map, man. Doing, I'm trying to mix at least. I'm trying to do 2 interviews and then one like TV or show thing each week.
So you're
And
back to doing 2 interviews a week now. Okay.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sort of kinda. I'm mostly.
Okay.
But in a way I'm trying to do it is one that people know the name, whether it's, Brian Tatler from Diamond Head or like today, Alan Robert from Life of Agony went
Mm.
up and,
Mm-hmm.
trying to do like one of those a week and then one of them that is probably lesser known or unknown so that people get a feel for, everything that's not only established, but everything that's coming up. Cause I don't want to lose that part of it at all. I want to make sure that we're always covering the new stuff that isn't getting its fair share of attention.
Sure. No, no, absolutely, man. Well, I remember, we were talking about something. It's funny because I kind of ran into this the other night, another situation. Um, I remember you telling me you were out and it was something about the jukebox. What's the name of the jukebox they have at the bar?
Touch
Remember we were talking
tunes.
about Touch Tunes. That's it. And we were talking the other, there was another issue this week. It didn't have to do with me. It had to do with another some other people that were at the bar, and we went to just get something to eat, and there were people fighting over that thing, man. And
Right.
we were talking about that earlier about that Touch Tunes, how it's like, you know, as a bar, why if you're gonna put that in somewhere, I mean, you got to understand that there's different people who like different types of music in that
Sure.
place, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, if we went in and we would play metal and hard rock, if someone else goes in and might play rap or play, pop or whatever it is, and there's just always battles, and a lot of times the owners take the side of the music that they don't fucking like. I mean, the ones they like, and the ones they don't like, they kind of say, "Yeah, you know what, you guys can leave the bar."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I just not to get too much into that, but it just reminded me when I was seeing it, I'm like, Jesus Christ, we just freaking talked about this not long ago, just on a phone call, and here it is. I mean, they didn't have to do it with me this time, but it was like one person was playing like sort of the hip hop stuff, and one was doing country. So you get
Right.
those conflicting genres, and people start beefing about quit cutting off my tunes, and wait your turn, and all that shit, man. But I just don't know why people have that in the bar if they're not going to let people just use it the way they want to use it.
Well, and the worst part is it's their laziness that's causing the problem because
Mhm,
you can, as somebody that has worked in business where we've installed those, you
mhm,
can tell it what it can and can't play.
that's right.
You
Okay.
can tell it only play these categories of music
Mhm,
or only play songs that are up to this length of like 5 minutes long or whatever.
okay.
If you want to avoid the guys like me that'll come in and play a 22-minute Dream Theater song just to fuck with the bar, you could turn that
Yeah.
off. You can
Mhm,
absolutely turn that off and you could say, nothing over 5 minutes or 6 minutes or whatever you want.
mhm,
I mean, you can program it any way you want. There's touch tunes in bars all over the place, and I would say probably 60% of them, if it's a country bar, they're not allowing Guns N' Roses.
mhm, mhm,
They'll have it all set to Jason Aldean and, Merle Haggard or whatever,
mhm.
um, it's laziness on the bar owners. They just put it in and they see it as an ATM machine, and that's what they do with it.
Yeah, true. Well, it also depends on what kind of bar it is, right? Yeah, if it's a niche bar, like you said, if it's a biker bar or something.
Mhm.
Well, sure, they know they're gonna have a particular crowd in there that's gonna want to listen to certain types of music. But if you're in just like, for instance, this was just in like an Irish tavern, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
you know, I mean, you get all different types of people that go in a place like that, right? You have country or rock. I mean, all different types of fans, of music, of different genres. To me, it's just like, yeah, I mean, why even have it there to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just put on the radio put on something, get your own mix or do your own little, Spotify mix or whatever, and put it over the speaker with music that you want to hear, or something that's not gonna you feel drive people out of the place,
Yeah.
instead of putting that stuff in there. So I don't know. It's just
Dude, it happens all the time. The truth is, and look, the bar owners will never admit it, but the truth is they want that.
yeah, they
They
do, don't
want
they?
people. They want people to throw in that 5 credit fast pass, pay 2.25 to put their song
Mhm,
ahead of the next guy, and get into those battles. And they'll deal with the occasional yelling match between two tables and throwing somebody out to
mhm.
make that money. That's just the bars are
Yeah,
broke and they need money, and
yeah,
they
mhm.
can make $2.50 or $3 or whatever it is for every fast pass on on a
Yeah,
song.
mhm.
They're just
True.
raking money.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just like I said, no, I mean, yeah, 100% right, of course, with that, but it's just an unnecessary little nuisance that
Mhm.
happens. And like I said, we've talked about stories that's happened to us personally playing music and getting to
Sure.
battles with people. And just seeing that the other day, just kind of, it was just funny seeing that. But anyway, man, so yeah, so just to get to talking about excuse me, to get to the topic that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about what's, we're seeing this 90s resurgence happening. It's been happening slowly, I'd say, for maybe a couple of years, like two
Mhm.
years or so. But I think this year it's really just kicked it in just another gear.
Sure.
And just last week on Labor Day, I actually went and saw Alice in Chains
Right.
play out here at the Shoreline Amphitheater, place I know you've been to yourself
Mhm.
before in the past.
Sure.
It was like the hottest fucking, it was well over 100, like 50 degree, 50, 60 degree humidity. I mean, 50% humidity.
Right.
So it was pretty brutal. It was a brutal day, but it turned out okay in the end. It was a good show, man. I mean, obviously Alice in Chains, yeah, they're great and they headlined. But it started off, there was this band called Thunder Pussy, which started off the show. They were all
Mhm.
female band from Seattle.
Right.
They played covers, but I think they played some original stuff. But I think they were originally a cover band that turned into now, making their own music. They sound like I think I was telling you the other day, they sound like that band Heart, the old
Sure.
band Heart, the Wilson sisters. Have that kind of vibe to them. It was a good band, Then after that, Bush came on. Never been a big fan of Bush over the years. In fact, I really couldn't stand them in the 90s, but like it really wasn't so bad. It's funny now when I listen to some of those songs from the 90s where I wasn't into certain bands, especially that post grunge stuff. But they now it's different because they want to hear the music. I don't get that like feeling like get this shit off. I hate it. It's more like it's nostalgic, right? It just brings you back to that time of your life. And so, I didn't mind listening to some of those hit songs, and and it was actually going pretty well. It was a decent show. Some of their newer songs have like more of a stoner, doomy feel to it, so that the stuff wasn't actually that bad. But I think I was telling you how Gavin Rossdale, the singer, just unfortunately had to bring up some political stuff that kind of put a little bit of a damper on. You could tell the whole crowd was just not feeling, even for the people who
Sure.
I think agreed with him politically, were just like, "Come on, man! Like, why even go? They were having a good time, kind of thing." Um, but yeah, and then Breaking Benjamin was the next band. They obviously not my thing either. More along that I guess like early 2000s sound. Like a mixture of like a Linkin Park and I'd say Disturbed. Is their thing. But I will say, they put on it was a good show though. I mean, if you like that music, it was good because the sound was great. They really played really well, and the singer, I guess something happened to him years ago. He sounded like real slow, and I guess he had some alcohol-induced something,
Okay.
in his
Wow.
brain, yeah. But he was a super cool guy, man. I will tell you that guy was a very the one thing that was cool about the show was that it was just sort of except for that Bush part, it was really sort of this it had a really an old rock feel, like, from
Sure.
back then. It had that vibe, just with the crowd, you know what I mean? It just felt really good. People were happy, even though it was a brutal day with the heat and everything. But great show. Like I said, of course, Alan Chains, they killed it. Alice in Chains. I'll give William Duvall, man, credit, dude. He really just does a great job live. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know he's not Lane Staley, but really, if you're going to get someone to emulate him or to take his place, I really don't know who else could have done, can do what he does. I mean, he was, the songs they played where it was just, the old Lane songs, some dirt songs. I mean, he killed it, man. He knocked it out of the ballpark, just a great time. As the bassist Mike Inez said too, where other show you get to see both a pussy and a bush, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah,
nice.
But anyway, man, yeah, there's a lot of young kids. There was a lot of young kids there. Like I'm talking like young, not even like 18, 19. I'm talking like 9, 10 years old. Parents bringing their kids to a show like that, which I gotta say, that was one dad had like 3 young kids with him, man. It was super. Yeah, that was cool. And there was younger like teens there too. I mean, or like 20-year-olds. So I was pretty encouraged, overall, even though it's just one show out here. But out here, think about how it is out here. It's still, it's pretty much the wokest place, arguably in the country,
right?
Where people aren't really as into rock as it used to be in metal. Even though this is where thrash metal freaking was originated from. But so I will say I was pretty encouraged with that. But of course, the thing I wasn't encouraged with was with the fucking price of everything, which is just fucking unbelievable, man. Insane.
Yeah, you were telling me this. What? How much was it for a drink?
Well, to get a double vodka and tonic was $22. Yeah,
you could buy a whole fifth of vodka for about $40, right?
I know, man.
Probably cheaper than that for vodka.
Probably
for vodka, which is what I'm sure they were using. I'm sure they weren't Grey Goosing you.
I paid a couple extra bucks for Tito's, but Tito's is no Grey Goose. Tito's is good, but it's not Grey Goose exactly. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't even just the drinks; it's just everything. Like I want to just for a second. I saw this the other day, and this astounded me. So Merciful Fate, as you saw, is playing right. They're going to be touring. Yeah. So I was just looking at someone. I forget where I saw it, but someone posted somewhere. I'm like, holy shit! I'm just going to bring up. Just look at the price. Now we're talking about Merciful Fate here, man. You know what I mean? This isn't. I mean, I know they were a big band back in the day, but let's be honest. I mean, when's the last time
they were never that big of a band? They were never an arena band or anything.
Thank you. Exactly. That's my thing right there. It's like they were never that big. So let's look at these fucking prices. Okay, look at that.
Oh no, fuck that.
$198 for mezzanine. I forget where this is at exactly. But I mean, look at that for Merciful Fate. $500, $400, $300 for the pit.
Yeah. Dude, I had the same thing happen to me a couple of weeks ago with Tesla, of all bands, Tesla. And I've seen Tesla for $10, and we kind of decided late we wanted to go, went to get tickets. Of course, they were all sold to themselves, all sold to the secondary market.
Of course.
And they were the same thing. It was between $150 and $500 a ticket. And I was like, I'm not paying that for Tesla.
Insanity, man. Insanity. Well, and as we saw recently, with just take an example with Anthrax, right? They just canceled that part of their European tour.
Yeah.
Because the logistics are so expensive. Like you would tell me about that and how, the busing, they couldn't get someone maybe to even drive a bus. On top of just everything it took. And I will say this, I'll give a band like Anthrax credit, which I normally don't do in situations like that. I always, thought those guys were kind of a bit of some, I'm gonna say money grabbers, but you know what I mean? They were, they'll do anything, didn't play anywhere just for, which I totally get these days, you got to do. But they canceled the tour. And really, because think about it, if they didn't cancel it, they went ahead and went with those shows, who's going to pay those prices? It's going to be the customers. It's going to be the list. It's going to be the fans.
Dude, it's funny you bring that up because I chatted with Wednesday 13 today, and they're going to Europe after this U.S. tour finishes up. They're on a U.S. tour now, and then they're going to go to Europe. And I asked him, I said, hey, have you made sure that you've got, transportation and whatever? And he was like, yeah, he's like, the reason we have a bus, because I told him, I started talking about it. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm well aware. And he said that the only reason that they have a bus scheduled was because they actually had this tour booked before COVID.
Oh, wow.
And they left the deposits for when the dates came back.
How about that?
So
Wow.
because they left the deposits instead of pulling their money back, they're still basically being held a bus.
Wow.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to go to Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy right now, man.
It is. It is. You know, and then we always talk about too about how a lot of bands are not, supporting the younger, newer bands, I should say, not younger, but newer bands. But at the same time, there is a reason for that. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the promoters are not going to put you on a bill if you're not going to pay your way. Like I think I was telling you the other day, I was talking, that the band recently interviewed, and they were really good band, man. This groove metal band out of New York called Damn Your Eyes. They've been offered to play with Anthrax and with Testament and with Ginger. And I mean, like, there's like 4 or 5 major bands they would, the promoter asked them to play with them. Sure. Okay. Pay 15 or 20 grand and you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So of course a young band's not going to have 15, 20 grand to do that.
Or they will, and they'll come back broke.
Or that, and then their band's done. Or they're a band, like we've seen bands over the years who, like a Five Finger Death Punch. These guys already have some money, whoever's backing them, with his family members or whatever. So of course those guys, bands like that could of course afford to do that, no problem.
Yeah.
But if you're just a really kick-ass, younger club band that's really making noise, you've got no shot. I mean, unless you're going to go ahead and do, because let's be honest, you pay 15 grand for what? Just to have about 500 people, maybe just even hear you in the background. They're not even really paying attention half of the time. And so it's like, and just to get your name on the bill, I guess, is the most important thing. Just to say we toured with so-and-so, but no one's really going to be listening to you and really giving you a fair shake. Most people aren't.
Yeah, and the truth is, for me anyway, and probably for most people, that doesn't mean what it used to. When somebody says, we've toured with, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and whatever, Limp Bizkit, whoever it is, do you care? Do you care? Back in the old days, 20 years ago, because you knew that they were part of a package that made sense, then that mattered.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's just like, so what?
Yeah.
And plus a lot of bands lie. They play one show with Overkill and they say, we've toured with Overkill.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, no, you didn't. You played one fucking show. Stop it.
I know. Yeah, it's, I guess I don't want to get all negative or anything or sound so defeated here as a metal and hard rock fan, but or for for the bands that are up and coming, but it's just a huge hill to climb now for these bands. And that's why you are seeing, we've talked a lot about with the last couple of Tremors, we definitely have been talking about, the nepotism that goes on. I mean, we see now, Slipknot touring with Corey Taylor's band and with Clown's son's band, Corey Taylor's son's band, I should say, and Clown's son's band. We've talked about Metallica with their sons.
Yeah.
You can go down the line. It looks like Scott Ian. It won't be too long till he'll be doing that with his kids' band.
Right.
Like I said, I'll say it again. I'm not blaming the musicians. I'd want to help out my son's band just the same way. At the same time, for instance, the Slipknot, Corey Taylor's son's band. I remember he was coming out just going off like, I mean, we know we've got it lucky, but at the same time, I mean, I feel bad for the kids because they're in a tough spot. They got everybody yelling at them online or, just bitching about them being lucky, being, having the opportunity that no one else really has because of who they're related to. But I don't blame them. But at the same time, if I'm them, I just keep my mouth shut. I mean, that's all you can. It's like we've even talked about it with Wolfgang Van Halen. Yeah. Now he all of a sudden is like, everywhere. And let's be honest, the guy never did nothing until Van Halen died. It was like, oh, we need another Van Halen. Let's just plug in Wolf.
Yeah.
Wolfie, So it's like, but we see though, this is why it kind of sucks that you don't see any new bands. And that's why I give credit to Alice in Chains. They're taking out Plush, I believe, but same thing. I mean, they've got good promoters and they've now played with enough bands where it's not that it's not new for them to be on a bill like that. Now they've been on a bunch of them,
right?
But this Thunder Pussy obviously is someone new that no one really knows about. So I'll give credit just taking out one little band and doing, even if it's locally, right? I think like Thunder Pussy was playing the shows out here on the West Coast, and I
Mhm.
believe I guess Plush is doing more of the Midwest and East Coast stuff as the fourth band, the
Yeah.
special guest. So, there's some of it there, but it's still it
Mhm.
looks doom in terms of the in terms of younger up and coming bands getting a shot on a tour like that. You're
Mhm.
just not going to see it probably anymore, unfortunately.
Well, and
Yeah.
the real unfortunate thing is how much business does it actually turn?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I'm friendly with Mariah and Plush, and I follow very closely what they're doing. And if you go to their YouTube and you look at their numbers on their videos and stuff, like
Mhm.
their actual official videos,
Mhm.
it's not crazy.
Yeah.
It's not like 3 million views on every video even,
Mhm.
and it's not 3 million streams or whatever. It's like 20,000 whatever. So it's really not a situation where, well, we toured with Seven Dust, Slash, Hailstorm, Evanescence. They toured with all these bands, and what did that really get them?
Mhm. No, it's true.
You
Exactly.
know,
Mhm.
got them
What?
20,000 plays.
Yeah, and $20,000 to get on it. That's it.
Yeah,
Like,
probably.
pretty much, you're getting like $1 a play there. Obviously, it's not like it's a good thing. Obviously, it's going to get you some sort of
Mhm.
no, people are going to start hearing about you somewhat, but it's like you said, it's not what it used to be. Where if you got on that tour, that was like, "Ooh, these guys really earned it because they're really good
Yeah,
and they paid their dues and they're really up and coming and the buzz is really going strong for this band." But like you said, that just is sort of something that's not there
yeah,
anymore.
it's kind of gone away. And the other piece to it too is, and you bring up the Alice in Chains tour. I'll use that as an exact example. When you put a no name and then three name bands,
Mhm.
nobody's going to see the no name anyway.
True.
How many people were
Yeah.
there? I mean, you were at the show.
Yeah.
What was the difference between you saw the first band play, that
We
Thunder
did.
Pussy
We
band?
did. Yeah.
Okay, how many people were there for that versus by the time Alice in Chains came on?
Well, of course. I
A
mean, there was
quarter?
hardly anybody there for that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially on a hot day like it was. Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
literally played for what, 300 people?
I'd say a couple hundred were probably actually paying attention. Let's put
Yeah,
it that way. I mean, we were there, and saw it for like sat there watching for 5 minutes. Okay, let's go walk up here and boom,
yeah,
just walk around and listen,
yeah. They
kind of
could have
thing.
done that in a club and
Probably
not
get
had to
better.
buy on.
You get probably better reaction, probably even more, sales.
Yeah, probably
That's
sell
the
some
thing too.
merch, yeah.
I mean, they were selling a T-shirt for $40. Who's gonna buy a Thunder Pussy like plain T-shirt
Yeah,
for $40 when you can buy an Alice in Chains or a Bush or a Breaking
yeah,
Benjamin
exactly.
one?
Well, and that's the
You
whole
know?
thing. You got 3 bands that you've heard of, and people will stop you in the bar and say, "Oh, you saw that show? So did I,"
Mhm.
and then you got Thunder Pussy.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna know who the fuck that is.
Yep. And when you're paying $22 for a drink,
Yeah,
well, at least you're not gonna pay that in the club. You're not paying $40 a shirt in the club.
yeah,
So, yeah. So, like you say, no, it's really not what it once was, even getting on a site like that. It's just
mhm,
it's not worth the invest unless it's just a favor someone's doing for you that's for free, cool.
yeah,
But we know that doesn't happen in music business. Nothing's for free. And, it's just, it's like you said, it's just not what it used to be. But um, cool. But before we get into just talk a little bit about the 90's resurgence with some of the
mhm,
bands and what we're seeing, we're going to go ahead and do a few things first, like we've been doing. Tremors. We're going to get to, first of all, we're going to bring up here the Metal Media Mockery of the Month.
alright,
All right. This one, okay. This came out in August, so it's a little bit under a month old. Let me bring
okay,
this up here. This is I'm really interested to get your take on this because we've seen some of these bands. I should say bands. We've been seeing a lot of these publications putting up just complete junk and crap. So here's the one for this episode we got here. So it's this band. They're called Alpha Wolf. They're out of Australia. They're like a
okay,
metalcore type of band. So the
sure,
front man goes off on venue for taking a cut of the band's merch sales. So let's
alright,
go ahead. Why don't we go ahead and actually play? Let me just make sure I'm lining this up right. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and play the video. All
okay,
right. I want to see it. You can hear it here. It's not huge on the screen, but you can hear it. Let me just get your take after you hear this. Here we go.
alright.
Before we got out of here, I want to mention everything on this tour is selling merch over there, over there. We're all trying to get the same shit done. It doesn't matter whose merch you buy, any bit of money you spend helps. Especially when these dirty fucking venues are taking 20% of it from the bands playing tonight. We think venues doing that can afford some good fucking air conditioning, but apparently not. So if you got any money to spend, fuck the bar, spend it on a shirt. Before we got out
Yeah,
of here,
well, oh, 1 sec, sorry, but okay. Yeah, so Alpha Wolf calling out this venue. Now, this venue I found out was in Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
Okay, so it wasn't here in the States, but it was in Vancouver. It was on their North American tour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my thing is a couple of things from this. Now, is this really news? A venue that's taking a cut of a band's merch sales?
No.
I mean, that's been going on for a couple of decades at least.
Yeah.
I mean, at least since I'd say early 2000s. I remember when I had my label that happened to my bands that played at the Whiskey, you had to give 15% of the cut of the merch.
Sure.
Yeah, none of us like it. It sucks. Bands especially don't like it, especially when they're on tour from another country. I get it. But there's a couple of things in there, going off on the venue for doing, okay, well, if these venues aren't around me, where the fuck you going to play your show? Let's put it that way.
That's
You
it.
you don't think they're feeling a pinch from the COVID and everything like that to keep their venues still going? I mean, that's one. Plus increased rents in every major city. A city like Vancouver, I'm sure it's the same thing that you see here in the States,
Sure.
any major city. The other thing, too, at the end there, he talks about, this is the one I didn't like, as he talks about, about the bar. Well, fuck the drink, get a shirt. Now, for one, if you want me to get a shirt, then go ahead and impress me with your music if I'm going to buy a shirt, for one.
Yeah.
So you're telling basically take the money away from the bartenders working there and make it tips off of, being a bartender, and just go ahead and give that to us. Sure. I mean, just to me, I mean, this guy just seems like a complete asshole. Just for
Well,
one.
he's a selfish young punk kid. I mean, that's honestly what it is. He doesn't realize that if the venue can't stay alive, then he doesn't have anywhere to play.
Mhm.
That's the first thing. Second of all, whose dumbass fault is it for playing this venue?
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Mhm.
What did the venue hide this 20% thing and then spring it on them once they were on stage?
Mhm.
I'm quite sure they knew prior to going on stage that they had to give 20%. And at any point before they went on stage, they could have said, "Fuck you, I'm out."
Exactly.
They
That
didn't.
Mhm.
And to be honest, to your point about, the venues are feeling the pinch. I don't care if the venue's feeling the pinch or not. If that's their deal, that's their deal.
Exactly.
You
Mhm.
accept it or you don't. If you don't
Yeah.
want to play their venue, don't fucking play it.
Exactly. Look, if you got a venue in the middle of a big city like Vancouver, yeah, it's going to be different than if you went and played in freaking, Tacoma, Washington. It's like that's
Yeah.
just the way it is. And once again, is this news to me? I think what this did, or what it was for, I should say, was more than just to give the band some time, some press.
Yeah.
Because who the fuck's ever heard of Alpha Wolf, for one?
Well, nobody will again now.
Well, I mean, they won't, but not for the right reasons, right? They'll know
Right.
about who they are, not for the music, but it's that guy that went off about having to pay 20% of merch.
Yeah.
Now if they said 50% of merch, I'd say, okay, he's got a reason to gripe there. But 15, 20%, that's sort of the standard sort of percentage anyway they take off in clubs these days.
What's next? Pitching about the IRS taking their cut too?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then he's complaining about the air conditioning in the place. Like, dude, I mean, come on. You're playing for a metal band here. I mean, are you really worried about getting air conditioning?
Yeah.
I mean, my thing is just like, you sound like a pompous prick. You're talking about air conditioning. I mean, so yeah, let's give us that 20%. And I just, the whole thing to me, when I saw this and I heard this, I'm just like, for one, it's not news because venues have been doing this for years. So I'm sure he's not the first one to go off on a venue about having to pay a shitload of money or a percentage of their merch.
Right.
It's just not. Once again, it's more to just point out. This is Loudwire that did this one. That this is just I mean, this is garbage news. It's more divisive stuff. It's
Mhm.
more about let's now get the bands versus the venues. Let's get the fans and the bands fighting the venues. Great. All right. In the end, we got no venues left. I
Yeah.
mean, we got your little tavern and bar down the street. That's maybe got a little corner that you could set your instruments up in. I mean, that's what it's going towards. If you
Or
got clowns like this doing this stuff.
Yeah. Or the other piece is the venue just stopped doing original music because there's no problem. There's no merchandise deal at all if it's just cover bands.
Well, that's the other thing too. And let's be honest, how many fucking people are buying Alpha Wolf merch? That's why you're making no money, dude, because no one knows you yet.
Yeah.
I mean,
You haven't earned your keep.
exactly. So, all right. I don't want
That's
to too
funny,
long,
though.
but yeah, there's our metal media mockery of the month.
There you go.
There it goes. So let's go ahead and before we what we're going to do next is we're going to do the Buzzskill band of the month real quick. So yeah, a Buzzskill band of the month this week, or this month, I should say. Hello, month. God, it's been a long day. Incognito Theory, The Brotherhood is their new album. These guys are from New Jersey. Solid band, like a hard rock 90s groove metal southern sort of grungy band. They sound I guess the best way to the best band I should say to compare them to would be like a Texas Hippie Coalition
Okay.
type
Yeah.
of band. In that vein, they definitely have like sort of that southern, groove. They sing a lot about drinking. It's but they also have like a little bit of, like I said, a grunge or just like a 90s feel to them.
Sure.
Their producer is Steve Zing. So Steve Zing's obviously from Danzig and Sam Hain. He's been a long time member of both of those bands.
Sure.
And also Mike LaPond used to play bass with these guys. So on this this record right here, they put out an EP last year. Incognito Theory did. We had them on Aftershocks.
Mm-hmm.
When I first heard it, I was like, we should definitely promote this band. They're really solid. So yeah, Mike was in the band originally. I guess Mike I believe he moved out of New Jersey, and so he was no longer in the band. He's obviously still doing Symphony X and kicking ass with that, and with Ross the Boss. But yeah, he plays about on half of the songs, I think, on this record.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, Steve Zing is the producer of this record. So good stuff. Incognito Theory. We're gonna go ahead and play a video here just to give you guys a little taste. This is Sunset Moonshine off their album The Brotherhood right here on Aftershocks.
Hey, y'all, you ain't paying us? Fuck you. We're gonna rob your shit. Yeah, fuck you. Grab me a shot. Fixes everything. Heals my bruise. Battered skin. Numb the pain. And we're okay. Cruising down
All right, we're back. That was our Buzzskill Band of the Month, Incognito Theory, Sunset Moonshine. Great song there, great video. I love those videos where they're just sitting there and drinking and just, just that old school rock and roll type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Just, bare bones, man. Sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of stuff. It never gets old.
That's all you
Yes, mate.
need. You don't need a big video treatment to make a cool song cooler.
Exactly.
Just play it.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, let's just talk a little bit about here, and then we'll wrap this up on this episode of Tremors about the 90s resurgence. As we were saying, we've talked a bit about this a little bit, hinted at it in the past, but I wanted to just kind of focus on really what we're seeing out there. I mean, obviously, when we think of 90s, the first thing we think of is grunge.
Sure.
So we obviously know out of those big grunge bands, there's really only one left is Pearl Jam, but they're bigger than ever.
Mm-hmm.
They just played, I think, a few dates out here, sold out 2 shows, no problem in arena. I mean, they're still as big as ever.
Yeah.
We've interviewed some bands over the last couple of years. The band Dead Original. Remember those guys?
Yeah.
Grudge Sound, the guy who was a drummer from, I think, Trivium. He did a stint with them for a little bit.
Yeah.
We obviously bands, and like I was just telling you before, the band Bush is out there playing with Alice in Chains.
Sure.
You've got Candlebox. I mean, other than Pearl Jam, I meant Alice in Chains. I forgot to mention that before. But you got Candlebox. I know you interviewed Kevin Martin earlier in the year. So so the bigger names from those early 90s, mid 90s, they're still they're still out there, or some of them are getting back together. They're reforming and doing tours. You've got the groove metal stuff. I mean, Pantera obviously is doing a reunion, if you want to call it that. We just played this Incognito Theory. They're along those lines. Last year, I remember you interviewed Diesel Machine. You remember that band, obviously?
Yeah, the guy was up on the mountain.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Because you could get in to talk to him. I could have for some reason. There was something because of his connection. Yeah, yeah. And that was, of course, Diesel Machine was with Pat from Damage Plan,
right?
The vocalist when he was with Damage Plan. And of course, if you have bands like Helmet's out there now, just touring relentlessly. You've got post-grunge stuff and post-hardcore like Quicksand, Cave In, Glassjaw. These guys are all touring now like crazy.
Sure.
We've known about the rap metal stuff. Rage Against the Machine's back now touring. Limp Bizkit's playing Madison Square Garden. They're touring, putting out new music. Downset, they did their new album on Nuclear Blasts. I mean, we're just seeing a lot of resurgence, even with the guy you just did, Darren Miller, right, from CKY with his new band, Nuclear Blasts. The 96 Bitter Beings, correct? I think that's the band, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know they were a little bit later. They were around the early 2000s or so, but we're just really starting to see now. I think the 80s nostalgia it's done. I mean, yes, you're still going to have Motley Crue. You're going to have Def Leppard. You got Poison still going out and playing. Those guys will probably keep going for a while. A lot of that, I think, too, is because they still have most of their original members in those bands, too. Where some of the other 80s bands maybe don't have as much. But let's be honest, there's not many bands that are sounding good though out of that era. Like we know,
the 80s bands have all just retired to the casinos now. It's an easy paycheck. They can keep doing what they do, make their 15, 20 grand and go home. Do it two times a weekend, make 40 grand, split it 3 ways because that's all that's left of the originals, if that many. And then they go home. Everybody makes 15 grand for the weekend. I mean, it works. The reason, honestly, the reason the 80s stuff is starting to die out and the 90s stuff is starting to get popular is the fans are dying, to be either dying or staying home because they're old.
That is true. That's one.
I mean, that's a big one. I know, look, I'm 53 years old. And as a 53-year-old guy, there's no fucking way am I standing for 4 to 6 hours on a cement floor anymore.
Sure.
Not going to do it. So, like a Megadeth show, probably not going to go. But I don't know, a Queensryche show where I'm going to get a chair. Yeah, I might go to that. So now you're looking at the next, I hate to say it, but those 90s bands that we're talking about, they're all 25, 30 years in. Yeah. You start thinking about it, and those fans they're in their 40s. That if you were 15 years old when Edema was your favorite band, now you're 40 years old, 42 years old, 44, and those bands are getting the same love that the 80s bands started getting about 10, 12 years ago. It's all, and if you think about it, man, they're all coming back, every single one of them. you know, you mentioned the big names, but the little guys are out there too. Puddle of Mud's putting out a new record. Soil just put out a new record last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are not big bands. Drowning Pool is out there with yet another record.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's the 90's era they're all back together making their money, because after 15 years where they couldn't make any money, now they can again.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can go and play these package shows for 5,000 people
mm-hmm.
and make a decent living.
Mm-hmm.
Once again. And honestly, most of them have been forgotten. So when they do announce, it's just like, again, it's like a repeat of the 80's bands when they all came back.
Mm-hmm.
The 80's bands disappeared for the grunge era, basically, and the Korn era. And then they came back. And when they came back, people were like, oh, I used to love that song. I'm going to go see Rat. I want to see Round and Round again, and it's the same thing with, people see Candlebox. They're like, oh, I used to love that song, You, or Far Behind, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go see that at the casino for $25 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where we're at now, man. It's just, I hate to say it, but we're getting so old now that the stuff that we thought was past our prime is now like oldies.
well, I think the other thing too, I mean, let's be honest too. I mean, do we still want to watch Vince Neil or Don Dokken up there singing about chicks? I mean, not that they can't even sing right now. I mean, we know that they've just completely lost a lot of their, they're not just their voice, but some of their faculties as well. But
sure,
I would say a lot of it's just, it was like, I mean, if you watch one of those guys up there, an old guy singing about girls, and I mean, it's not. Let's be honest too. A lot of those fans back then were women. I mean, women don't want to see that anymore.
No,
No. The other thing.
Do you really want to hear David Coverdale singing "The Kitten's Got Claws"? I mean, come on.
I know.
Stop it. He's 75 years old.
No. Yeah, it's just. I think the other thing. Well, the thing is too. I always wonder is why. Really, the 80's bands, though, let's think about it. I mean, they've flamed out musically, everything, so much faster than the 70's bands. Those 70's bands, could still play. You know what I mean? A lot of them, even though they're older and they're 70, those guys can still rock out. The 80's bands, I think because of the type of music it was too, and just what it represented. Once you do it for a little while, I mean, let's be honest, the 80's nostalgia's been in, it's been in for quite a while.
Sure.
Right. It started around the mid to late, I'd say 2000s. And then from 2010 and on, it was really taken off. Now, not so much. Obviously, like I said, time's catching up and everything. And people are maybe like, okay, we've seen how many times we're going to see Motley Crue sing fucking those songs over and over and over again. I mean, I think most people have seen Motley Crue over the last 10 years who at least liked them back in the day. It's like you see it once, great, but you don't want to see these bands over, I think, and over. Just to hear one or two nostalgic songs. The first time you did that, I'm sure it was great. Like I remember years ago seeing it was like Motley Crue and Cinderella and Winger, I believe it was,
sure,
or something like that. And it was great. It was great seeing that because I liked Winger when I was a kid and saw a couple of those songs I loved, and it was a great time. But I was not going to all of a sudden when they're playing again go see them again. It's like, okay, I got to see it the one time again. It's great, but I don't need to do that again. So it's like. To be able to, I think those bands to tour over and over and over, especially if they have no new music coming out or that no one knows about, it's just people aren't going to go see them as much. They'll see them once and that's it.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a big part of it, and the other part of it too is the 80's draw now. The audience is not the hardcore fans anymore. The hardcore fans are kind of done. The really hardcore, the uber hardcore guys, they'll go. But the guys that, like, I'll use myself as an example with Metallica. I'm done with Metallica. It's not the same. It's not the same. And it really tarnishes what was the most amazing times of my life to see. And they're still good live. I mean, they're still good live, but they're not as good live. And it's tarnished to me, somebody that's seen them 30, 40 times. The people that go to see these shows now are more the casual people. They're the people that don't realize that, that it's not the same singer in Queensryche anymore. They're just like, hey, that they don't even know the guy's name. They're like, that guy from Queensryche still sounds great. And they don't even know it's a different guy. And that is really what it has become now is it's all cover bands in a way. you know, we would have called all of these bands cover bands back 15 years ago without any hesitation. But now it's like, well, you know, our good friend Bob made the movie Band versus Brand.
Yeah.
You know, you own the title, and therefore you work with the title that you own, and you just realize that people are stupid and they don't know who's in the band.
Well, they don't care who's in the band.
They don't care. Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't care who's in the band, really. I care if I'm paying $200 for a ticket, but you know, like the Pantera thing, I couldn't give a shit less. I'm going. And I'm not going because, you know, I'm not going because I'm looking at it as some reunion. It's not. It's a tribute to a bunch of songs that I like and I want to hear again live. And it'll be full of energy and it'll be fun. And that's why I'm going. I'm not going because it's Pantera, man. You know, Cowboys from Hell. No, it's not. It's two guys from Pantera. It's as much a Down reunion as it is a Pantera reunion. Let's be honest.
That's a good point. Sure, yeah.
You know, so, but I love those songs, so I want to hear those songs. And I think that's how most people are now with any of these bands. If you like, I don't know, Rat, Dokken, LA Guns, you know, any of those bands from the 80s, you just go.
Yeah.
And I think the big advantage that the 90s bands have, the 90s bands were more like the 70s bands where they were a little bit more faceless. You know, I mean, you mentioned Candlebox. Yeah, you can name Kevin Martin. Who else can you name from the original lineup?
The guy from Sons of Silver. Adam,
yeah.
Oh man.
What's his name?
Curry. Adam Curry.
Yeah. Okay, that's one.
You didn't think I'd do that, huh?
That's one.
But that's only because we've interviewed Sons of Silver and we're fans of that band. So
I mean,
yeah, other than that, I would have
you would have never known. And I could name Kelly Gray, but you know, whatever. That's that's because I'm a dork in the industry. You know, I mean, name anybody but Wes Scanlon in Puddle of Mud.
Well, they've gone through so many members. Now I wouldn't know. I mean, back then, Greg Upchurch, I believe, was a guy. See,
okay.
One. I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Yeah, you know, it's the same thing.
Because we're dorks about it. That's why.
Yeah,
you know?
You can name one guy from each band. You know, name somebody that's still in edema.
Oh, was it Jonathan Davis's brother in there or something?
No, but he's not anymore.
Oh, he's not. Oh, well, then nobody.
Chavez.
Marky
Chavez. That's what I mean. Is those bands were a lot more faceless.
Yes, you're right.
To where it doesn't matter who's in the band, as long as it sounds sort of the same. People be like, "Yeah, cool. I remember this. It's great."
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, the other thing too is these days, I mean, I'm seeing, I mean, and you know, you got a good buddy of yours that does this, but these cover bands are making killers these days. People would rather go see a cover band play those hits than, because it's also cheaper. It's closer by. You can go to, you know, a local bar and see it, or a local smaller venue. You don't have to, you know, make a whole big thing out of it. And it's not the same thing, but if you're going to go see a band whose original singer isn't singing anyway, it's essentially the same kind of thing because you're not seeing the original thing.
And the cover band will be better because their bread and butter is being awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, the Van Halen, I'll use a Van Halen as a shining example. Every town in every major city in America has a Van Halen tribute band in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I guarantee you every one of those tribute bands is better than the actual Van Halen on the last tour.
Probably.
Guaranteed. Why? Because they had to be. You know, their whole money is on it sounding great so that people will come back 4 or 5 or 6 times. Where David Lee Roth couldn't give a flying fuck. You know, he's like, fuck it, I made my money. I'm cool. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, the other thing too, I think with the 90s and why I think it's having a resurgence, and I think and the reason why I think it could last pretty not so much, like the some of the bands we talked about, you know, the later 90s bands, but at least some of those early 90s bands, whether the groove metal or the grunge bands, is because really the lyrical content. You know, if you look at what's been going on in the last few years with the pandemic, right? Pretty down or depressive stuff, not very happy times, which kind of coincides with what the 90s was singing about back then.
It's true.
And so I think a lot of people, especially, you know, your age, my age, and in between and below and above, if you were into that, you know, a lot of people, they not only, they still relate to that stuff. I mean, it's hard to relate in your 50s and 60s to girls in terms of, you know, driving around on Sunset Strip, yada, yada, yada. But everyone can relate still in some way or shape or form to lyrics from Soundgarden or Alice in Chains or Nirvana. I mean, you can, and I think that's something, especially after this pandemic happened, and it was just also just a perfect sort of time for that music to start coming back in when people are sitting around and thinking about the past, and then oh yeah, and they think about those bands, and then the lyrical content fits what a lot of them are probably feeling at the time, and that's something I think that those kind of lyrics, just like with the '70s bands, if you're not singing about cocaine and chicks, a lot of other stuff you can sing for and sing about for a long time, and people will continue to relate to it. So it's another reason why I think the '90s is back in, and I think it'll I don't know how long it's going to last for until we start seeing. I mean, what would be after that? Let's put it that way, right?
Korn, Disturbed,
Right,
that
exactly.
era.
That era. Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be a lot smaller era because there were not as many big bands in that. I mean, the big bands kind of stayed big. There's not a middle tier in that era. Not like the the big bands, the Korn, Disturbed, Slipknot. They're still big.
They're still big. That's the difference. They're still huge. Exactly.
Yeah. That's going to be. I don't know what's gonna. That's going to be the first time that we have a real gap. I think, because there's just not a lot of those mid-tier. I mean, what are the mid-tier bands from the 2000s? I have no idea.
There's really not many. I mean, because most of those mid-tier, they didn't even get to make, because by that time, the way the industry was changing already, it was done. So yeah, they were. It wasn't like it was in the past where they were signing 50 bands a year, just hoping a couple would hit, or a couple would did okay. You're right. I mean, you were either Disturbed or one of those bands, or you weren't.
Or you were dropped.
You were dropped.
Yeah.
You got one album and that was it. And then if you did get a second album, it definitely wasn't with that same label,
right?
Which was a bigger label. So that's it. Well, people consider that, right? A lot of people consider the Seattle scene and grunge to be the last sort of movement in rock,
right?
Because I mean, yeah, you have the new metals are. Let's be honest too. New metals, back pretty hard too right now. It's a lot of. I mean, there's these new metal bands, that are coming out. So it's interesting. That's pretty much it, though. Yeah, I mean, other than that, the bands are still, most of them are still going. I mean, it's some of those, for instance, some of the, I guess they would call it the new wave of American heavy metal back in the early 2000s when you had,
Chimera and whatever,
with Chimera and all them, and Lamb of
God,
yeah. Some of those bands, have reformed. God forbid, just played their first show in years, about 10 years, I think, the other day. I think they're coming back. There was another band that was good in that time, and on Earth. We've seen Gizmachi that came back last year. That band, great. That was a really good album they put out. So yeah, but they are few and far between. There's not much, and then after that is I think in the mid 2000s is when everything just became focused on nostalgia in general. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But for now, the '90s is back. I'm loving it. Not everything about it. Some things are back where I wish they weren't back, but for the most part, it's at least cool. To see these bands out there put out maybe a new record and tour. So
sure,
but all right, man. Well, anyway, we're getting close to about an hour here.
Yeah,
I guess we're ready to wrap it up. Anything you want to add before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, man. Just it's always fun to do these, and make sure that you're surfing cmspn.com every single day because there's something released pretty much every day of the week. So go over there and listen to something or watch something, and watch it more than listen. We don't really give a fuck about the podcast as much. The podcast is there if you want it, but we want you watching. We're putting at least Matt and I are putting a lot more time into the production of the video.
Yeah,
we're determined to be TV stars, man.
That's right. Well, be the TV. It's look. Everyone and their mother's got a podcast where they're just sitting there talking. I mean, it's got to be more to it, more meat to it. We just want to make it more of like a TV, a video, not just something you can sit down and watch on your big screen and not just put on your the radio in the car. I mean, you can do that too, like you said. That's what the podcast is there for. But yeah, I mean, we definitely, and we're not done. We're not done improving stuff. We just want to keep making it better and better for all you listeners and viewers out there. So, as always, thanks for tuning in and watching and listening, and we'll see you everybody on the next Tremors.
See ya.